Okay, hello everyone. We're getting ready to go in just a few seconds here. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhasa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhasa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhasa. So over the next few weeks, I'm going to be talking about the three characteristics. I'll stretch this over four talks. This first one will just be a general introduction to the topic. The tilakkhana, the three marks or characteristics, represents, I would say, one of the core metaphysical doctrines of Buddhist philosophy, a way of looking at the existent world, the conditioned world, that every phenomena that arises, everything in the world is marked by these three characteristics they have in common: dukkha, anicca, anatta. To give them their common English translations: suffering, impermanence, and not self. These three are interrelated. Any one of the three that's really understood in depth in its totality will imply the other two. You could say there are three different lenses or points of focus to understanding the nature of existence. To these three, we can also add the factor of interdependency, of dependent arising, that nothing exists independent of other things. And this comes up as an aspect of the three characteristics, which you will see when we get into the particulars of the individual characteristics. They're very important. It's a very important concept in the Vipassana tradition, because it's essentially by seeing the three characteristics that you are really developing insight. When you see the phenomena that arises to the mind as being imbued with these three characteristics, then you are seeing them clearly. You're penetrating their nature. Any phenomena, whether it's of body or mind, internal or external, will have both individual characteristics, particular characteristics, such as being pleasant, unpleasant, being red or blue, being large or small, and infinite. You can expand the list infinitely. This is how we distinguish and identify particular impressions to the mind. And we get identified with and attached to and desirous of these secondary characteristics. We enjoy certain phenomena and we find other phenomena fearsome or painful. But no matter how pleasant or unpleasant a phenomena is, when it's examined properly with the eye of Dhamma, when it's penetrated with insight, then it's seen to have at its core these three characteristics of dukkha, anicca, anatta. And the purpose of seeing in this way is to, well, first of all, gain an understanding of reality, but also beyond that, to diminish the attachment to phenomena and develop nibbida. Nibbida is a mental quality that's is very difficult to translate properly into English. Some translators have called it disgust, which I think is too wrong and has too, or it has too strong and has too negative a connotation. Others have suggested disenchantment, which may be closer to the mark. Nibbida means that you're no longer fooled or captivated by the phenomena that arises, because you're seeing them in their clear nature. And this allows you to, from nibbida, it allows you to develop viraga, dispassion, and then nirodha, cessation, which is the ending of the process. What our mind does in the ordinary course of existence, which what we do again and again, an infinite number of times without beginning, is that the mind has desire for an object. Consciousness seeks an object, and there's a kind of a hopeless project. The mind wishes to find satisfaction. In a sense, it wants to find completion. It wants to find closure. But the objects themselves are unable to provide this satisfaction because they have these characteristics. They're not perfect. They're not pristine or fully perfect. So whatever object is grasped by the mind can at most provide a momentary sense of pleasure, but it can't provide lasting satisfaction. So the mind then immediately begins reaching out for the next shiny thing. And this process goes on and on and on. And this is the primordial addiction. And this is where the rut we're stuck in. And it is the essence of samsara. This is the meaning at the deep psychological level. This is the meaning of samsara. Samsara comes from the verb samsareti, which means to wander aimlessly in circles. And that's what we're doing. One of our bhikkhus compares it to playing solitaire with a deck of 51. There's no possible way you can complete or win with samsara. It's a pointless game. Another metaphor is a kaleidoscope. A kaleidoscope is a children's toy that's like a little telescope. And it has some, in the lens, there's some mirrors and there's some bits of colored glass, broken shards of colored glass. And as you turn the wheel, it rearranges and scrambles these shards of colored glass. And then they're reflected through these mirrors to make a mandala-like image, which can be quite beautiful. And the more you turn it, the more you see different endless arrangement of these mandalas. But if you take apart a kaleidoscope and see how it's constructed, you see there's just a few shards of broken glass, and all these images are just constructed momentarily out of combinations and recombinations. So the objects in samsara are like that. 3 shards of broken glass are anicca, dukkha, anatta, and they're constantly being rearranged. And every new shiny thing is momentarily fascinating or terrifying, but then it fades away and something else is presented. And if you're focusing on the differences between these objects, you can get lost in them. But if you penetrate through to see the shards of glass, you see that they're all in their core. They're all just dukkha, anicca, anatta. And then you begin to lose, they begin to lose their hold over you. You begin to become disenchanted with the process and are able to break free of it in the end. And this is realizing the unconditioned, realizing the nibbana is no longer chasing after the next shiny thing. So samsara is essentially something we do. It's something we choose, an action we take moment by moment by choosing to take an object, invest our being in this a hopeless project of finding satisfaction in the multiplicity of objects. And when we just stop doing that, then the mind can, in the words of the Visuddhimagga, the mind can light upon non-occurrence. So any one of the 3 characteristics, when it's penetrated fully and fully understood, it becomes transformed into a gateway of liberation. And so there's 3, just as there's 3 characteristics of samsara, there are 3 gateways to nibbana. One who penetrates the nature of dukkha is said to be a body witness, because dukkha is most evident in the body. If one penetrates through the characteristic of impermanence, anicca, this is called the signless liberation, the animata liberation. Animata is any mentally created object, and in meditation practice, it has the technical meaning of a mental image that can be focused upon as an object of samadhi. And when impermanence is understood, there's nothing to focus upon. And the one who penetrates by understanding not self, this is called taking the voidness liberation, by understanding voidness. So we'll talk about these 3 characteristics and their meaning and their relationship more in more particulars in the coming sessions. I want to give just today a kind of a general overview of the 3 and how their importance in the entire system of the Dhamma. And it is primarily this aspect of understanding reality and breaking free of the process. So first of all, knowing, and then by knowing, becoming disillusioned and breaking free of the fascination with the various objects. In the Visuddhimagga, which uses this, the Visuddhimagga as a text is very much in the tradition of Abhidhamma and of Vipassana meditation, in broadly, using that term broadly, because the Vipassana tradition is really a later development, but the Visuddhimagga is in that same train of thought, of analysis. The Visuddhimagga speaks about the 3 characteristics quite a bit, and their relation to meditation. And there's one passage that uses a metaphor of the process of insight meditation as being like a man fishing for eels, which were considered a delicacy. And he's standing in up to his waist in swamp water, and he reaches down and feels around with his hand until he finds something squirmy, and he picks it up and takes it out of the water and examines it. And if it has three stripes, he doesn't stop to hold it or examine it any further. He immediately discards it, throws it away, because it's a poisonous snake. This swamp is full of poisonous snakes that can be recognized by having three stripes. But eventually, as he empties the swamp of snakes, at last he catches an eel, which is nibbana, the unconditioned. So the process of insight meditation is like draining the swamp of poisonous snakes one by one. This is the meaning of the metaphor. And this is done by recognizing the dhammas that arise to the mind as being dangerous. There's recognizing the dhammas that arise to the mind as being dangerous. There's a whole list, and again from the Visuddhimagga, there's a whole list of you could say it's an expanded list of the three characteristics that, in different terms that apply to the conditioned phenomena that arise to the mind, which includes the three characteristics, but also has dependently arisen, as alien, as being like a canker, being dangerous, being fearsome, and so on. Everything which arises to the mind can be classified as a dhamma. The word dhamma, this is the what Abhidhamma is about, is classification and discussion of dhammas. Dhamma just means, well, it has a very specific meaning, but it can be looked at from two different angles. It's either subjectively, it's the object of consciousness. So everything that arises in the mind is a dhamma. The mind takes dhammas as objects. Anything that arises to the mind is called a dhamma. But objectively, a dhamma is a unit of reality. The modern Buddhist writer Sherbatsky came up with a very good term, I think, for the meaning of a dhamma in this objective sense. He calls it a point instant. It's reality taken down to its very finest grain. This a momentary occurrence in the mind. And with insight meditation, we're trying to get as close as we can to seeing the stream of dhammas as independent objects, one after the other, or individual objects, not independent, but individual objects, one after the other, one dhamma after the next. And as I said before, there's an infinite variety of dhammas, but they all share the three characteristics in common. And as we see this stream of dhammas passing through the mind, at first we're confused, we're caught by desire or fear, depending on the particular objects. But as we gain proficiency in the practice, we begin to see past all the various colorations and particularities, and we begin to focus naturally more and more on the underlying reality of these three characteristics. And I would say, as a point of practice, we need to be advised to be a bit cautious in how we proceed with this. That we shouldn't be using the thinking process or the intellect to impose these characteristics on things. We should let them unfold naturally. This is a bit of a tricky balance, because it does help to have the knowledge, some understanding of the theory, so you can make sense of what you're seeing. But if you just impose it with your thinking mind, then you're not really seeing it. You're kind of just making it up. So it doesn't have that same power, that same penetrating force as when the characteristics become self-evident. And at different times, for different individuals and for the same individual at different times, one or the other of the three characteristics may be most evident. And that becomes, a natural point of practice, a natural stream of the gradual unfolding of wisdom. We're also told by the Buddha that not seeing in terms of the characteristics, which is basically the way of the world, is called the hallucinations or the vipalasas. That if we fail to see the characteristics, we imagine the opposites. So in place of dukkha, we see perfection and satisfaction in the objects. That's an hallucination. We're seeing something that isn't there. And if we imagine anything to be permanent and stable and everlasting, that's a hallucination. And if we imagine anything to be substantial, having a real substance and a real independent existence, then that's failing to see emptiness, failing to see anatta or sunya, and that too is a hallucination. And talking about hallucinations, another one of the Buddha's similes is, he said it's like hunters wanting to catch deer. They'll make a decoy deer out of straw and sticks and put it in the middle of a clearing, and then hide in the bushes with their bows and arrows. And other deer will come and they'll see this dummy deer in the middle of the field, and they'll think, this is a safe place, there's already deer here, and they'll start coming into the clearing to their destruction. And the Buddha said the dummy deer is like the vipalasas, and the hunters are like Mara, ready to cause your destruction. And if you become enamored by the unreality of the phenomena. So I think that's probably sufficient for an introduction to the topic. And next week we'll look more closely at the characteristic of the dukkha, which will require some definition. So let's see what we got for questions here. I appreciate this new term, nibbida. It reminds me of Socrates. Often when looking at a mass of things for sale, he would say to himself, how many things have I no need of. It is all ordinary. Yes, yeah, very good. Like I've heard that story about Socrates. They said that he lived very simply, but he liked going to the market. And someone asked him, "Well, why do you like hanging out at the market?" And he says, "Because I feel happy seeing all the things I don't need, that I can live quite easily without." It seems like Sunya describes both the impermanence and non-self aspects of things in one concept. Does it also incorporate dukkha as well? Uh, that's something I hope to get into in the course of these next 3 weeks, talking about these characteristics, is how much they each reflect each other. They're all aspects of the same underlying reality. And probably emptiness or sunya, in the most broad sense, is probably the deepest and most encompassing of the three. Um, that you could say things are impermanent because they're empty, and they're empty because they're impermanent. They're suffering because they're impermanent, and so on. There's all all of them are reflections of each other. Is samatha sufficient for becoming an Arya? No. Uh, the, um, the the practice of samatha is generally considered limited in that way, that it doesn't actually lead to the final the deep penetration of reality that's required. I currently practice with a teacher who teaches samatha only, and I'm wondering whether I should be undertaking vipassana. Um, well, you can take samatha a very long way, and the more deeply you gain proficiency in samatha practice, then the better your insight will be when you go that way. But samatha alone is not sufficient to really penetrate the nature of reality. What's with Kundalini snake sleeping in a back? Not sure what you mean by that. Kundalini snake sleeping in a back. You mean in a back? You mean at the Kundalini in repose at the base of the spine? Is that what you're talking about? Yeah, there's a whole system of developing that Kundalini, and it's like an energy in the body. I think it may be related. If it's not exactly the same thing, it may be related to PT. If a lay follower is not guarding their sense doors, be possessed by a demon or a yaka, we're chanting one of the protection chants, make it exit out of the person's body. Um, yes, the paritas are a protection against these kind of demonic forces, but they can't gain any entry to you if you don't give them an opening by uh, basically not keeping the precepts, and uh, an immoral and defiled mind, and you're making an opening for them. The Buddha taught to see the world as empty. Why is nibbana also considered empty if it is not impermanent? Well, I'm going to get into that on the talk on anatta, which will come into sunya. This quality of sunyata, is the most universal characteristic because it applies to nibbana as well as samsara. There's no substantial essence anywhere, including the unconditioned. But to say that the nibbana is not impermanent is true, but that does not mean it is permanent either. It's timeless. It's outside of time. Akaliko. What's the relationship of signless liberation and nibbana being called consciousness is signless in Sutta with Baka Brahma, but not being called body witness or void consciousness? Uh, yeah, one of the in the Sutta with Baka the Brahma, the Buddha talks about the liberated mind. It's a very interesting passage. It's a stanza of verse that occurs only two places in the canon, both times in relation to Brahmas. The Buddha basically giving a description of the enlightened mind in these terms, that it's animata, signless, that it has no foundation, finds no footing is a literal translation, and it's luminous and boundless. Um, the liberated mind is animatized, is without a created, because the nibbana is the unconditioned. It's neither cause nor effect, so nimitta does not apply. Nimitta being a created object. But I think although it's really in essence the same thing, I think when we're talking about animata liberation in terms of the three characteristics, it has a specific technical meaning that's perhaps a little bit more precise, referring to understanding through the vehicle of not self, or of impermanence, I should say. Can you repeat the Pali term for hallucination? Yes, palasa. Vipalasa. Although I know one day my parents will die, today might be the last day, but still not I'm ready to face that reality. How can I deal with this impermanence? Well, one of the ways of contemplating impermanence is to realize that everything is impermanent. Even trivial things. If you gain a grasp of it in terms of small things, like one of the ways Ajahn Chah would talk about impermanence, say he'd pick up his drinking cup and he'd say, "You see this cup? It's broken. Obviously, at this moment, it's not broken, but inevitably one day it'll be broken. Every cup eventually becomes broken. So this is the same with every human being. Eventually, you're going to die, and your parents are going to die. So if you kind of realize that, accept that from the beginning, then it's easier to deal with when it actually happens. Contemplation of your own death is one of the Maranasati is one of the contemplations the Buddha recommended doing frequently. Can you explain how one practices contemplation of impermanence? I'll get into that in some more detail on the talk on impermanence, because the contemplating impermanence is, I'll just say briefly here, is has different levels, at different time scales, and it's kind of useful to see it on different time scales. Which you've already talked a little bit just now about Maranasati, contemplation of death. That's contemplation of impermanence on the time scale of a human life, which runs over so many decades. There's also very long time scales, and the Buddha would talk about it in terms of the end of the world and so on. That the one sutta, the Satta Surya Sutta, where he talks about the end of the world by fire. The whole point was to impress this on the minds of his listeners, that even these mighty mountains and oceans that you take as permanent, and one day they'll be all burnt up and dried up and gone. So that's kind of a geological or cosmic scale of time. But the deepest contemplation of impermanence is at the momentary level, that each moment things are falling away. Nothing persists at the final analysis for more than a moment. Nagarjuna said emptiness is higher truth than nibbana. Does Theravada agree with this? I would say not in phrased in that way, but emptiness is, maybe if not a higher truth, it's a more comprehensive expression, because it encompasses both the conditioned and the unconditioned. Is there anything we should know concerning the three characteristics in Brahma Viharas? Arahants still have metta. There's no point where we abandon it, correct? Yeah, the Arahants would still have the Brahma Viharas. The Buddha said that the wise man always dwells in the Brahma Viharas. But there, I would say that this is a whole another really big topic, is the paradox involved in between wisdom and compassion. And compassion being encompassing the other Brahma Viharas as well, but it's usually expressed in these terms of wisdom and compassion. These are the two highest qualities of a Buddha. The Buddha is perfect in wisdom and compassion. But if the two of them seem contradictory, if you don't have the full understanding of the terms, because wisdom emphasizes the emptiness of beings and so on. So if you have this kind of cold wisdom, or it's kind of a false wisdom in a sense, but a cold wisdom without being illuminated by compassion, then you can become very heartless. It doesn't matter what happens to that being. He's not, he has no self anyway. It's just a collection of dhammas. And he dissolves. Who cares? On the other hand, if you have compassion with no wisdom, you just become kind of soft-hearted and foolish. And you don't. You're unable to actually really do anything effective in the world to relieve suffering. Which of the three characteristics is more important to realize first, in your opinion? You can't say it like that, because all three are in terms of meditation practice, they're all of equal weight, and it's not really a question of trying to develop one first. It's just letting things unfold in a natural way. You'll see one or the other at any given time. How to meditate on the three characteristics. If you are able to observe the stream of dhammas with equanimity, then the three characteristics naturally present themselves. This is the key: is fostering equanimity, not taking reaction to the dhammas, but just observing them in a very calm, open, measured way. If you're not colored, if your seeing is not colored by desire or fear, then the characteristics naturally present themselves. Do you like the Heart Sutra? Yeah, that's quite an what's the word? It's quite a profound text. Of course, it's a Mahayana text. Who's to meditate off the cushion or on the cushion? There's no real difference. If you well, meditating on the cushion is, formal practice. I think is necessary, but it's an artificial exercise essentially. You're creating optimum conditions, but meditating off the cushion, in daily life is more challenging, but it's really the same process. How can we be sure nibbana exists if it is beyond sense perception? Up until the moment of stream entry, you have to take it on faith, really. This is the one point I think in Buddhism you have to take on faith as the third noble truth. But after stream entry, you're now certain of it. Is nirvana the same as awareness? No, I don't think you can compare the two. Vipallasa. Yes, that's the word. I'd have to look it up to be dead sure of the spelling. I think there may be a double L, and I'm not sure. But it's either that's as you have it spelled there, Vipalasa, or two L's. What are the Pali terms for signless liberation, voidness liberation, and body awareness liberation? Signless liberation is animata. Voidness liberation is sunya vimutti, and body witness. I don't recall the Pali for that. I'd have to look that up. How do jhana states relate to the three marks? Well, the three marks are not necessarily really evident in the jhanas. Because with the jhana, your mind is still. It's not penetrating the nature of reality. It's enjoying stability. But the three characteristics are still there. The jhana is void of self. It's empty. It's imperfect, even though it can be extremely blissful. It's still imperfect, and it's impermanent in that it cannot remain abiding forever. Are all parents really good? No, of course not. You're human beings, but whether they're good or bad, you still owe your parents a debt of gratitude for bringing you into existence. Is the suffering of the three characteristics different from the suffering of the Four Noble Truths? Well, the First Noble Truth is the truth of dukkha. The Four Noble Truths are expressed in the language of dukkha, talking about dukkha. The first truth is the truth of dukkha, the second is the origin of dukkha, the third is the end of dukkha, and the fourth is the path leading to the end of dukkha. So it's expressed in terms of this one of the three characteristics. But whenever we speak about any one of the three, the other two are implied. Take a couple more questions and then we'll wind it down. In Sarvastivada, there are three kinds of unconditioned: space, cessation with liberation, cessation without liberation. Can you explain the difference between the two types of cessation? I'm a little hesitant to get into that because I'm not as well versed in Sarvastivada theory as I would like.